only slightly get into this podcast, but like the Elon Musk OpenAI trial has been a lot of digging up receipts like it's internet drama, only it's for a $1 trillion almost company and the richest guy in the world. Yeah.
I feel like more things in human history function like forum drama than we'd care to admit to ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true and unfortunate. And I think more people should have gone through forum drama in their formative years to have a better idea of how to handle it.
Get on Reddit, start some flame wars.
Sincerely, like
we should be having high schoolers signing up for something awful.
Yep. Intro freshman year course, have a flame war and come out of it and then try and make friends with everyone in your class afterwards, I guess.
Yes. I like that. Make them mod a large unruly community or a small insane community.
Yeah, like just like organize any social group just at all, I guess. Because like again, the thing is, most of these guys have done nothing even remotely like that. They don't even like plan outings. Like their wives or secretaries do that. So they just
plan outings.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's bad. So yes, I think it should be mandatory. You have to organize a social group before you're allowed to make any consequential decisions for the world economy. But I think that's hard to enforce.
How are you enforcing this one? I'm thinking, yeah, it's a new department and under the Attorney General to like enforce LARP participation among venture capitalists.
Yeah, like definitely like send them all on a LARP weekend first. Like hello and welcome to the Fast and Broken podcast, where we take a critical look at the fast-moving world of tech and online culture. I'm Carly Rector, a software engineer and startup founder who has been using Claude Code since its release and Cursor for even longer than that. And I've said that before, we're going to get into it again.
Well, I'm Oz Brown. I am a customer support enthusiast who has somehow, despite my best efforts, also become a software engineer. And I have been your software engineer.
You have. Very exciting. Oz is a friend and mentee, ? And past employee when I was running my startup that I founded for my intro. So
yes.
But yeah, which for anyone who doesn't have the context, shut down like 2 years ago now, a little over 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
So Oz is back at Amazon.
I am.
And I am doing other stuff, but we've got some background in addition to like being friends from the internet. But
that's fair. That's fair. And I've also been using Claude Code for longer than some others due to your encouragement.
Yeah, which we can talk about a little bit. So the topics we're going to go over today, we're going to talk a little bit about AI coding tools, as alluded to by that intro. Basically how Claude Code is doing our software engineers rotting their brains, some other like developments in the world of everyone is using Claude Code now, or maybe they're stopping for various reasons. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the ongoing saga of circular finance deals in AI. And in particular, I do want to talk a little bit about the Anthropic SpaceX deal, because I think that one is interesting for its own ways, in addition to the fun circular finance nature of it.
I'm very excited to get your take on that one.
Yes. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Kickstarter's sort of clarified content policies and content and copyright policies online in general, and the uneven enforcement of them in some cases, and how that sort of affects the online creator and content ecosystem. Let's jump into AI coding tools. I think the first thing I want to do is actually do a little bit of definitions here, because I feel like people who don't use them don't really know even like exactly what AI coding tools are, or I will particularly like narrow this to agentic coding tools, which agentic is a word that can mean whatever people want it to mean, perhaps as much or even more so than AI does. But the way Anthropic usually talks about something being agentic is it's an LLM using tools in a loop. So what that means is it's not that you ask it to generate something and it just gives you some text and it's done. It generates something, and part of that something is it deciding to take some action, and then it can get the results of that action back and take more actions such that it can do multiple things and just sort of proceed and do a whole bunch of work on its own without you having to prompt it every single time. So in the case of agentic coding tools, that might mean you ask it to do something and it not only like generates code, but it also actually edits the file and puts the code in there, and then runs some like ID linter checks on it to make sure that it's syntactically correct, and then it runs some tests, and then it finds some errors, and it goes back and fixes the code, and then finally it comes back to you and says, okay, I'm done.
My favorite part is when it clarifies requirements.
Yes.
So I'm like, yeah, you're right, Cloud Code. That is actually what I meant, not the thing I asked you.
Yes. One way to think about that is like the LLM has a whole bunch of knowledge about how to do things, like how like the actual syntax of code and like knowing a bunch of design patterns and libraries. But what it doesn't know how to do is exactly how to take actions or like consistent workflows. So if you imagine like even if you had some really smart person working on something, you generally don't just like give them a task like go without giving them any more information than that, or some framework to work within like an SOP or like a guidance about like we usually do it this way, like following these steps, like you write the code and then you run the tests, or we like these kinds of standards, etc. Or like if you don't understand, you should clarify. And so basically what Claude Code, the product tool, is building all of that kind of like common sense workflow stuff into a wrapper around the LLM that makes it just work better. So one, for example, they added fairly late into Claude Code's run, actually, I think maybe 5 or 6 months ago, the Ask User Question tool, which specifically lets it like give you a structured set of questions where it's like pick A, B, or C. I don't know if you've even seen it do this at all, because it only yeah, because it didn't used to do that. Like it would ask you questions sometimes, but it would just like give you a list of questions, free text. You would have to type them back. Whereas now it will just like give you structured questions with multiple choice responses, and you can click them and go next question, and etc. Making it really easy for it to be like, okay, you gave me some instructions, but it was unclear in like these different ways, and these are the questions that I want to clarify, and like here's what I think the recommended thing is, and basically like allowing you to clarify in a more structured way.
As you're saying that, what it kind of reminds me of is so I made a joke at the beginning about customer support enthusiasts, but I did get my start at doing customer support work, and in particular support over forums, over the Xbox forums. And since a lot of times we'd only have like one customer contact a day per issue, like you'd really want to give them a good answer so that it's not like like ask them a one-line question then come back another line. And so like we talked a lot about like how do you format something to the customer where they will give you back like the maximum useful information, because of course anyone who's ever written an email or a message with a bunch of different questions in it, you do not get all of them answered.
You do not.
But we spent a lot of time like discussing how do you maximize the odds of getting the important information back to move forward on an issue. So it's kind of interesting that that's also kind of being built into these agentic systems.
Yeah. To sort of segue to our first bullet point here, which is like the Claude Code leak. The Claude Code harness itself is a separate thing from Claude, the LLM. And there's a lot that is in the harness, actually, because it turns out that all of that kind of stuff is what makes it work really good. And there was something like 500,000 lines of code in just like the harness for Claude Code, which is
500K in the harness.
I think so. Let me make sure that's right. Yep, 500,000 lines of code, which I think is bloated, probably, because they are having Claude write all of their code for Claude Code. But like there's just like a lot of stuff in there that prompts and like tool use guidelines and just like a bunch of things in there that are best practices for how to work with code, basically.
I think one frustrating thing about it being an engineer is that people don't want to believe that tech requires engineering. You know what I mean? Like they really do want to think that we're wizards, and like it's almost like, and my wife's an artist, and so people are like, oh, they think that like drawing is magical, and like it's like
Uh-huh.
no, it's a lot of thought and skill, and like so people think that like tech is magic, and like it's not like, no, it's all just thinking.
Yeah, it's like for a long time, I have felt that it's difficult to explain to people what a software engineer is and what they
Yeah.
do. Like, kind of both in the non tech world and just like to non engineer tech people, even.
Hmm.
Um, because like non tech people just don't understand it at all. It's like people just don't have the concept of like what it is involved. I think they do a little bit more now in terms of like you write code and stuff, but even still, I think people imagine like HTML, which, and not like the amount of logical putting together of systems that is the actual engineering part of it,
Yeah.
um, and how little that has to do with code in a lot of ways. And like I took an algorithms class in school where we didn't write code. Most of it we didn't even do on a computer. We did it on paper because it was just like doing algorithmic proofs, because it wasn't a matter of just like how how the computer runs it. It was more a conceptual thing. And as people are figuring out that just because AI can write code doesn't mean that it can engineer, people are having to just
Yeah.
sort of discover that more. And so I think that a lot of Claude code and a lot of like similar people have to build agentic harnesses for things is them figuring out that like just having the raw capability doesn't do it for you. You need to like actually do some systems engineering there. So
One thing I kind of like about vibe coding as a concept, like I'm not as against vibe coding as a lot of people. At the same time that people are finding out that a computer can't do engineering, I think there are other people who are finding out that they can.
yes, for sure. And I'm actually quite pro vibe coding compared to many people. Like, not only because, like, for my entire life, basically, but definitely my entire adult life, I have felt that more people could be software engineers than
Oh yeah.
are, like especially women, obviously, but just like in general, because it's framed as like you're sitting at the computer and you're just like typing, basically you're like the hacker or whatever, and you're putting
Yeah.
in too many semicolons. It's like, no, that's not the fun part though. Like
Yeah.
the fun part is like you're building a thing that does something and you're figuring out how to solve problems, and like that happens to incidentally involve code because that's how you like tell the computer how to do it, but that's not necessarily the most important part of it. And vibe coding allows people who don't do the code to do some of that other part of like the having the fun part of actually making things.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
And I think if vibe coding isn't a bad way to learn coding if you're going back and studying it also, like
mhm. Yeah, and like I think there's definitely some pitfalls of it, and a lot of them are like people getting too overexcited about it and being like, yeah, I could just launch an app. I don't need software engineers anymore, or like let's just vibe code everything now, and you don't have to take a step back and be like, is this a problem that we actually needed to solve at all? Like, let alone with a vibe coded app. So like, but like, which I have some empathy for because it's like people are getting suddenly unfathomable power.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
they just get really excited about it. It's like that's fair, but still, and like there's some risks of obviously security things. You don't want to use it for things where it's important, but I also am not as a big stickler on that for a lot of things, because if you're just building an app for yourself that runs locally, like it genuinely does not matter. Vibe code your heart out, like etc.
Yeah.
But and then yeah, like people when people run into issues with it, they do have to figure out like, oh, I actually like need to learn some basic engineering concepts here, more or less, to figure out how to go past like the limits that they hit there, which I think is really interesting as well. So
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I just like the demystification of it all,
yeah,
Um, you can be a software engineer, and maybe Claude can help you, or maybe you should just learn software engineering. You can do that too.
yeah. But yes, I think the biggest thing there is like I mean, part of it is again that like I'm a very senior software engineer, and I have gotten to the point where like I'm working at very large scale systems, and like if you're say a principal engineer at Amazon, a lot of things that they would say about principal engineers at Amazon is that often some of them just did not write code for months or occasionally years at a time, because like that's not the most efficient use of your time at that level. Like other people can write code, other people cannot think at what the level of a 100-person organization is, basically.
Right. Other people can write code. Not everyone can go into a half-hour meeting with that person who wrote code and was like, yeah, here's how this is going to break something you've never heard of.
Yes. Or like plan the 6-month roadmap for like the entire organization, technically, based on like an understanding of what the goals of the business are or whatever. Yeah. And like that kind of stuff. So that is sort of like the angle that I come at it from, which is like, I have not felt like code was the point in quite a while, more or less. So like my experience with Claude Code has been like, this is amazing, and I'm not sure I could go back to not using it ever, because like the gap between what, like I could come up with something that in my head that I know exactly what it is and that I can make it happen has just narrowed so drastically because that was so big in the first place. And I think like that gap depends on your feelings about it, because it's like for me, I could be like, oh, I figured out exactly how this system should work, say at Amazon, and then between that and actually getting the system like launched involved spending another couple weeks writing up a design document, logically breaking it out into pieces that other people than me could do, and like flesh out further in further depth that even more people could do, because it's just like there was just too much work there that I was not going to do all of it. Like it was a team's worth of work, and therefore I had to like define it and break it out into the like such that a whole team of engineers could do individual pieces of it at the level that they were able to do, and work on that over the course of like 5 sprints or whatever. And then it got launched. And that's just a lot of work. And now I can just be like, Claude, I vaguely described a spec to you. And then it's like, great, I created a plan and do you want me to do it? And I'm like, yes. And then it does it. So like the level of speed, like people talk about, is this like a 10% improvement? Is this a 10x improvement? Is this a 100x improvement? Like genuinely for some of the stuff that I'm doing, I do think it's a 100x improvement, because otherwise it would have taken months and I can do it in a day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is crazy. And that's why every time everyone's like, well, I don't know if coding tools are actually that much improvement. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Well, and I think that's, I think that's where a lot of, what I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is, but like kind of like the tension between there's some stuff that these tools are really, really good at, and then there's everything else that is being forced to adapt to it, that like it's like, well, no, it's bad there, it's not good at doing that thing, or it's extremely energy intensive, or it only works because it's trained on a bunch of stolen artwork. I mean, again, like tattoo artist. I think if she was a digital artist, we might have some more contentious feelings about, AI use in the home. But luckily, computers can't stab you yet.
Yeah, I mean, they can probably, but not very well.
Actually, I guess that's sort of radiation therapy is.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's definitely medical robots for that kind of, not tattooing, obviously.
Not tattooing yet.
Yeah. Only because there's not that much money in tattooing, probably, but like there's the theme of this podcast is that there's a lot of tension here, and that I think there are some good ways to use AI and bad ways to use AI, and we should talk about both of those things instead of being either on the hype train or the throw it all in the trash forever train. Because
I am on the technically impressed and practically concerned train.
Yeah, like, so the other part of it is like, I could do something in a day that I could do in months is like cool, first of all, and fun because I can get things done. But also, as someone who likes to think that I'm working on things that are valuable, like that feels really valuable.
Yeah.
Because that means you can do so many more valuable things with that. So
I mean, like, Carly, if there were more people like you doing things and less people unlike you doing things.
Yeah, and well, so the thing is, I think that's the problem with a lot of at least like the scientist side of the AI hype thing is like scientists and engineers are all people who work on stuff where they're like, this is all really valuable but it's really hard, and if I could just do more of it, it would be better.
Yeah.
And often they are very narrowly focused on that and don't imagine that there are other fields in which that is not the case.
Right. And you know, and I industry loves to downplay its harmful effects, especially within itself. Like, but you know how hard it is to get someone to see the flaws in the things that puts food on their table.
Yeah.
You know, my the irony of my dad, who's extremely concerned with global warming, but like, you know, I grew up when he was working for oil companies and like thought everything I said about environmentalism was like, you know, weird hippie stuff, and now he has a ton of climate anxiety, and he's right.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it can be hard when, you know, when we're engineers and we're in tech and you're getting inundated with, you know, these constant messages of all these ways that it's improving things and innovating and yada yada. And it's like, well, you know, yes, it is doing that, but like it's also, you know, enabling scammers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's allowing unscrupulous companies to lie about where their product's coming from, and it's causing a ton of environmental damage, and it's really annoying on Google ad searches.
Yep.
And so it's like, yeah, you know, Claude Code does make a lot of things a lot easier, and also I understand why I have a lot of friends who are really angry.
Yes. And like I also understand both of those things, which it makes it hard. But I hope the things are separable to some extent, I guess, is the idea. I don't think AI is going to die forever, partially because it is actually very useful for things and is proving so in real ways. Um, so
Well, the
I
technology's not going to go away.
Yeah. So given that, I would like us to be having the conversation about like, okay, what if we didn't do some of the bad things quite as much, and not the like it should just all die forever, because it's not going to die forever. So like
Yeah.
that's the theme of the podcast, more or less.
Well, and I think systemic problems aren't solved by individual actions, and I think that's true on a personal level, and it's also true on a technological level, right? Like,
Mhm.
while we have a system that is rewarding a race to the bottom and capital as the be all end all success metric, like whatever the technology is, it's going to be used in a deleterious way because
Yes.
the people who control it uh, have absolutely no reason to be responsible with it.
Yeah, and that goes to something else that I can maybe like bring us a little bit more back on the list of things that we were supposed
Oh
to talk
yeah, yeah,
about on
yeah,
this
yeah.
list. But like, which is like a lot of the problems that AI is causing are like not new problems. They're just drastically accelerated problems.
Correct.
And like, if you got rid of AI, they would still be there, but less so. And like, maybe that's still fine and better, and it's like brings it to a less so level that's acceptable because it was before. But like, maybe we should just figure out how to solve the underlying problem to some extent. And like the most like simple version of this one is with one of the things that came up in this 404 article about software engineers rotting their brains, which is the problem of like AI generates more code than humans can review, which is
Yeah.
one of the big things that people talk about. And my response is like, yes, but also like humans reviewing code has never been the best way to make sure that code is good.
Everyone
Um,
writes more code than I can review.
yeah, so and I did when I was at Amazon do both like the actual reviewing and the trainer for other reviews of
Mm.
people who basically reviewed uh, technical assessments for like hiring. Like
Mm.
people went through an automated coding assessment. The automated system like graded whether you passed or failed, and for some gray area of where it couldn't decide,
Mm-hmm.
they kicked it to human reviewers to go in and actually like look at the code and decide if you passed or not. So we were reviewing the code, and a lot of that was done like originally. It was done just like on paper. The recruiters would come and be like, "Here's a printed out assessment. Please read this code that this person submitted." And I had to like explain to these HR people that like I'm not a computer. Like I cannot read the code on this paper and even tell you if it compiles or not.
Yeah.
Like that's not how that works. And like I can generally like read it and try and get the gist of what they were going for, but like if you want to like test it, you should run the tests by a computer, because that's
They
going to be
wanted you
way
to like
better.
take a red pen like circle the missing semicolons?
I mean, not specifically, but like in general, like grade this code on whether it was good or not.
Okay.
And so, and I had to like be the guidance to be like, okay, you're not grading syntactic correctness. First of all, because that's a stupid thing to grade. But second of all, because you physically cannot grade that as a human looking at code on paper. I'm sure there are some humans could do that, but also that's just like, that's not a productive thing to do.
that's a party trick, not a tech skill.
Yeah. And on every team that I have ever been on, people have been waiting for like weeks for code reviews because people have just not gotten around to it, and then have gotten a code review that was just like, looks fine. Or you go into the code review and then you're like, oh, this is so fundamentally wrong that you shouldn't even have written any of this code. Like, I should have stopped you beforehand. And like, those are the two modes where like you get
I'm so sorry. Come see me after class.
Yes, like those are really the two modes of human code review. And like, or like I have nitpicked a bunch of stuff that is pointless. That also happens. Like, yeah. So like none of those cases are good, like are helpful really. Like there's a very, very narrow slice of things where like a human looking at the code is better than, say, doing a design review before you write anything, or having tests that you run to make sure that it gets the right answers, or having static analysis tools that make sure that like all of your formatting follows certain standards, and that there aren't any security issues that you can catch via static analysis tools. Like all of that's going to work way better than a human looking at the code. So that's one of the things where it's like, yes, yeah, like you could say that AI generating more code than humans can review is a problem, or you could say that we should not have been counting on humans to review code as our measure of quality anyway, and now we just gotta figure it out because there's too much there, which is what I would say. So like that's one example, and so that's one of the things that came from this software engineers say AI is rotting their brains article, which is basically a bunch of quotes from software engineers, mostly at large companies, about how they are using AI-based coding tools, either because they wanted to try it out or because they're being forced to, and how it's not great in various ways. And like many of them are real in like, yes, if you're forced to like review tens of thousands of lines of AI generated code, that's bad. The thing that I said in my comment to this is like, it's exciting to me to use Claude Code because if you imagine before, I was spending like 10% of my time doing like the fun high level planning strategic stuff and then 90% of my time writing code. Now I don't have to do that 90% mostly, and I get to do a lot more of the fun stuff and a lot less of the code. But if you're in a job where, for example, you're not allowed to do any of the strategic stuff, or like that's not your role, all that you've gotten is like most of your work taken away, and the only I get to do like a tiny bit left of whatever the grunt work is left that is not that, and not any more fun stuff. So that sounds bad. Like I understand all of that. I think those are a lot of real issues, especially with how it's being implemented in big companies. But also, I don't think the conclusion of this article is kind of just like it's fundamentally bad for software engineers, and I don't know that that's true. I think it's just.
I mean, here's the thing. I just have better things to keep in my mind than Java syntax.
Yes.
like anything, anything.
Yeah, I saw one take that someone had that I thought was really pointed, is that like there are different kinds of software engineers. There are software engineers for whom the code was the point. Like they enjoyed just like putting together the code and like writing a cool, elegant function or etc. And those people are really upset that they're not able to do that anymore because of the AI coding tools. Or there are people who really could care less about the actual writing of the code part and are there for like the solving of problems and being able to just like put together something that does a thing, and therefore are quite happy to have that part taken away from them because they didn't really care about that in the first place, which I think is true to some extent. So
I feel a little of both of those. Like, I guess, yeah, professionally, I prefer the high level thinking stuff, but like there's something a little bit soothing about just busting something out in Python. Like what, just like, oh, I just need a little JSON parser, Yeah. Or like a little thing that translated forum posts into RenPy code so that could write visual novels more easily. That was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe it is just that like I've done it enough that
Yeah.
doesn't have any novelty for me at this point. um, but who knows? So like, yeah, I think there's definitely a range of reactions to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so that was more or less my takeaway of this article is like I don't think it's rotting my brain. I think it's making me exercise my brain more than I was before because I don't have to do any of the stupid grunt work stuff that I don't really want to be doing anyway. But I also see how that is not the case for many people, and I just think it's harder to identify exactly what the cause is there than they are necessarily implying.
I think that over the next, like 5 to 10 years, unless bubble pops catastrophically, and who knows,
Yep.
obviously it's going to really, really change what engineering looks like, especially in big tech.
Hmm.
And I think it could change what coding looks like in big tech in a lot of different ways. And I hope I hope that it happens in a way where there's more appreciation for, like we're talking about, like the high level stuff and the thought
Hmm.
that goes into putting together systems and understanding like how things are going to interact with each other at scale. And like that the demystification of the code itself
Hmm.
lends to a greater appreciation for engineering. And I know that's probably a little optimistic and idealistic, but it is fun to dream.
Yeah, I hope that I could see some of that happening like already. To like again, I'm not in a big company, so like caveat with the fact that I think big companies are way worse at this, especially because you have to still do like stupid sprint processes and things like that. And also, there's a lot of companies where even worse than Amazon about not letting engineers think about anything about than the code that they're writing, making it hard. And I'm working with startups, but I'm definitely seeing people already who have picked up the vibe coding and they have run into walls, and then they have come to me and said, "Carly, what's happening here?" And then I will explain something that I know off the top of my head because I'm a good software engineer. Oh, like, oh yeah, that pattern is problematic for blah 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 reasons. You should probably do it this way, and you
Right.
can see the realization on their face of like, oh, there's stuff here.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I mean,
so
yeah, it's such a black box for a lot of people, and I just don't think that serves the people inside or outside of the box.
yeah, like I've always been a big advocate that there should be much less of a wall between product and an engineering or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
Like the where the product people are like, no, I could not possibly understand any of the technical
Right.
details,
I know.
and the technical people are like, I don't care about the product, I just get requirements thrown over the wall to me.
Right.
Like that has always seemed like a terrible way to operate for me. But one thing that I definitely think that AI is going to do is break down that wall, because to the extent that you could ever just toss something over the wall, which was not high, you could just toss it over the wall to an AI now.
Yeah.
Um, but you can't for a lot of things. You have to have some, like I was saying, I think last week, even on the podcast, understanding of both the problem that you are trying to solve and the nature of the systems that you're trying to use to solve it, and like
Yes.
how you can fit those things together in the best way. And I think to the point of another thing that I talked about briefly last week and still have a half finished Substack post about, the like roles like forward deployed engineer are starting
Mm.
to combine those more of, which is basically an engineer that goes into a company and talks to customers and builds something directly without there being a PM or anything in front of them. Um,
Dope.
and that's according to Andreessen Horowitz, the hottest job in startups as of last year, and still continues to be very hot. And that I think both OpenAI and Anthropic are building like their own companies that are basically just deployment companies full of engineers that figure out how to use AI in for customers in product ways. So I think there's a lot of that already happening, and I do expect that trend to happen because I just think that's what makes sense. Because the piece of work that is left is figuring out what the problem is and then how to translate that to a shape of a solution, such that you can tell it to an LLM, maybe, but
Yeah.
like there's still work there. So I think definitely people are already starting to see that, in my opinion.
And point out to the LLM when it has a terrible idea, because it will
Yes,
sometimes.
that too. So yeah, that hits some of the stuff in our agenda. Let's like briefly try and talk about the actual bullet points here. One is this ramp report that showed Anthropic is beating OpenAI in business adoption for the first time
Yeah.
as of April. The graph is very exciting for Anthropic. It's like gone up way much. Like it has changed from like the February number, which was like 4.4% Anthropic and 18% OpenAI, to 34.4% Anthropic, 32.3% OpenAI in April. I said February 2025. So over the last like year, it has gone up dramatically, and OpenAI has gone up and then slightly down a little bit, which is super interesting. And a lot of that is um, the launch of Claude Code in general, which happened, I think, May 2025.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
then the big hype around Claude Code that happened around like December, January this year for reasons that no one is entirely sure about. It was just like people had free time over the holidays and started playing with it, and or Opus 4.5 finally pushed it over some threshold to be really good. But like, I didn't think there was a step change there. Other people were like, yeah, there was definitely a step change. It finally became very good, like in December. And I'm like, as someone who's been using it this whole time, it definitely got better, but like not, it wasn't functional before and now it is now. So
Not that much better.
yes. So, but yeah, and then obviously all of the stuff around the Department of Defense thing and people just thinking that Anthropic was better in general as a company swapping over has happened also. So yeah, that's interesting. They caveat in this post with like, this doesn't mean that Anthropic is winning the race now. Like, one thing that you can take from this chart is that it's actually very easy for an underdog to take over, and that could still happen. Like, maybe DeepSeek comes out of nowhere and wins in another year. Like, we don't know.
Remind me about DeepSeek. Is DeepSeek the Chinese one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, DeepSeek is the Chinese one that launched and then kind of wasn't that exciting, really. And why is it still at like 0.1% on this chart the whole time?
Was it more energy efficient or was that overhyped?
It was, in the sense that it was like much more everything efficient in terms of like, they said they trained it for only like $5 million or something like that, which there were some questions about that, and there was also some accusations that they were distilling the big AI labs models, and that's why they could trade it for so cheap.
Oh no, someone's
Yes, one of those. I definitely saw an OpenAI an article that was like, "Oh no, OpenAI accuses other people of stealing their intellectual property."
I can't believe someone would do that.
Who would do that
to sweet darling little OpenAI who's never done anything wrong, and it's his birthday.
So yeah, but yeah, things could change at any time. But Anthropic's doing pretty well, and it's mostly because of Claude Code. We have on this thing like why Claude Code is better, why Claude Code leak wasn't that interesting, which has to do with some of the stuff that we were talking about a little bit, in the sense that like the Claude Code harness is distinct from Claude, the model, which is the thing I think most people who saw that leak didn't understand at all, and they were like, "Oh, Claude's source code is leaked. It's like dooms the company now or whatever." And it's like, no, it's different. It's just the harness. Like, that is an important part of it for the reasons we discussed, but it is not the core part of the model. The other part of it is because it is just like a node harness. Like, technically, all of the source code was on everyone's computers already, just like a obfuscated version of it, because that's how you run the code. And so like, it wasn't super secret even before then. Like, you could have tried to reverse engineer it. It would just kind of been harder. Like, you didn't have like the raw human readable code, and that was what leaked.
So it may not like be as technically interesting, but I do think it's funny.
It is funny. That's true. And it was interesting to see people do analysis on the like 100,000 lines of code and like exactly what was in there. And like, I do think it gave an advantage to the competing tools. Because like, the other part of it is like, obviously, like, what Claude Code does is not a secret. You can just like use it and then see. Unless you work at OpenAI, which they have banned from using Claude Code, because they were like, people at OpenAI are using it and just figuring out what it does and copying it, so we're going to block them. But
oh no.
Yes. So you can just use it and see. So there's just like a lot of reverse engineering, or even just like seeing what features it has and copying them. that was going on already, and then this makes that easier for them to do. But it was always just like Claude Code has a few months head start on some of the other tools, and not like it's a fundamentally secret approach that they have. I do think one of the reasons that it's better is that they are better at building for customers generally. So one of the things I have talked about on this podcast before is that Claude Code was not intended to be a consumer product to start with. It was an internal tool for Anthropic.
That's right. It was.
They were just like, actually, this seems to work really well for everyone. And like 95% of Anthropic people adopted it just naturally without us asking them to really quickly, because it was actually genuinely really useful for them. Maybe we should launch this to people. And they were like, sure, let's launch it. So they launched it as like this CLI tool that wasn't even that user friendly, but was really useful. And people found it really useful and started using it. And then like the guy who does a lot of the work on it is on X all the time and sees people tweeting about it, and will be like turning around, be like, oh yeah, that's a good feature idea, turned it around, it's out now tomorrow. Like level of work on Claude Code. So just being really responsive to like what actually makes it more useful for people, instead of trying to build it as something that looks good as a product, I think is helping them a lot, which is one of the things that I feel like is just like encouraging in the world.
Encouraging, like from a perspective of, yeah, dang, sort of seems like when you focus on making a good product, you make a good product, but like still a little bit concerning, like from the bubble perspective. Just in terms of like, yeah, dang, you have made something real good. Does it make you any money?
It makes them a lot of money.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Yeah, that's where a huge amount of the revenue is coming from now. Let me do a quick Google search. That's one of the reasons why their revenue has gone up a ton. Claude Code alone brings in $2.5 billion, a feature that has more than doubled since the beginning of 2026.
Now, how does that compare to their compute costs, though?
Still, I mean, I think they've been doing a lot of calibration on this. So this is a whole thing otherwise, which they have been trying to like calibrate their usage limits for people. And they have in fact been dropping their usage limits, both because it's expensive and also because they just simply do not have the capacity for it.
Yeah.
And people have gotten really mad about it. That it has not actually been a problem for me. I also talked about this a little bit last time, which is that people are like, oh, Claude's going to die now. And like, the RAMP article actually talks about this a little bit too. It's like, can Anthropic keep this up when it's getting worse and charging people more and etc. And it's like, okay, but again, as a person who's been using it the whole time, it was worse for me in like November last year, when it was chewing through tokens and I hit my 5-hour usage limits like all the time, and had to actually like stop working or pay for a la carte tokens to keep working. And that has not happened to me since then. I could look at my usage limits right now. Let's go see. My max usage for the week is 4%. And that resets on Sunday morning. So that's basically, I have used 4% of my limits for the week.
Okay.
And again, I am using it all the time. So it's fine from my perspective. It's not fine if you're like running OpenClaw or you're like having a Ralph Wiggum loop that just tries the same thing 100 times in a row until it gets it right. Like, there are stupid things that you could do.
I have heard that term, a Ralph Wiggum loop.
It's a real popular one now.
What is, okay, now I must ask. Tell me about Ralph Wiggum loop.
Ralph Wiggum loop is Ralph Wiggum from Simpsons. But basically just like write a thing that keeps saying, did you do the thing? Like, Claude will come back with an answer and it will just say, did you solve the problem? Like, repeatedly. So just like keep trying until it gets done.
I see.
So you just like loop it until it gives you the right answer.
So like the miracle sort algorithm, but real.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
So people do that and they think it's really cool. And I'm like, that's stupid. I mean, like I guess it does work in the sense that like if you tell an LLM to retry things enough times, it's more likely to get there. But it's drastically inefficient and doesn't work for many things where like if you have not defined your success criteria correctly or thoroughly, that's just fundamentally not going to work. And also it choose through too many tokens. Anyway, my point was that Anthropic has actually been doing a lot of stuff to bring their inference costs in line, both because they just don't have that much capacity, and just because they want to be able to make money. I think they're similar to OpenAI is also like this, and they are actually doing okay on inference costs in terms of like they're getting approximately-ish, probably not fully, but approximately enough money to cover what it costs to actually like serve the traffic. And most of the costs are coming from training, because that's a huge chunk of work you have to do upfront before you have the model. And they have to keep putting more money into that to train the more bigger models. I don't know the actual details. I would assume that Anthropic is in a place where they're at least within like a couple of times of their inference costs via revenue. And like I've talked about before, like again, I'm at 4% of my usage. So if they cut my usage by like to 20% of what it currently is, that would be fine with me because I'm not using that much. So
using 20% of 20%.
Yeah, I mean that might be a little harder because I have gotten up to like 7% of my weekly limits before, but like everyone who's like, if Anthropic comes out here and like doubles the price or triples the price or cuts the usage limits drastically, everyone's going to be in trouble. It's like, well, not everyone, because I would be fine. So like some people are going to be in trouble for sure, but everyone who's like, this is all completely unsustainable, at least some of it is sustainable. I can sustain it.
So it's a skill issue.
Skill issue, yes. On the subject of Anthropic usage limits and compute costs, is this SpaceX deal that they did, which I think is super interesting. So the specific announcement headline on this Anthropic blog is higher usage limits for Claude and a compute deal with SpaceX. Because the important part, they think, for their customers is that they are doubling usage limits based on this deal because they just got a whole bunch more capacity, compute capacity, from the Colossus data center. So the specifics of this deal are Elon Musk made a deal with Anthropic to lease them capacity from the giant Colossus data center that he built for XAI, which is part of SpaceX now because for silly reasons, SpaceX has acquired XAI and XAI acquired X. So Twitter and XAI are all under SpaceX now. It's the AI rockets Twitter company now.
Okay.
And it's going to go public soon as that. So.
All right.
So the important part about knowing that XAI is under there is that this is the data center that he built to train and run Grok. And so the funny part about being like, I'm going to lease all this capacity to Anthropic now, is that implies Grok is not using it because Grok is not popular.
Okay, yeah, no, that scans,
which makes sense. But it is interesting that Elon Musk would admit to that.
We're not into the fascism maximizer 9000.
And he tried to walk it back a little bit. He's like, "Oh, we're still definitely using it, and like we'll be training new models soon, and we'll build out new capacity for that." Blah blah blah. The other article I linked here on that topic was, did XAI just concede the AI race?
Yes, I saw that one first.
Because it is just like, are you giving up? Because you're just handing your chips to Anthropic, which is a competitor. So, kind of feels a little bit like giving up. And then the other big reason for that, of course, that people called out is the enemy of my enemy is my friend, which is that Elon Musk is in this huge lawsuit with OpenAI and hates them a lot. And would like to do anything he can to kill them at this point for petty reasons, like that he wanted to be in charge of OpenAI originally, which came out a while ago as part of this lawsuit.
Oh, did he? Yeah, that scans.
Yes. The quote that I heard in a podcast I was listening to today that was insane is like, in some email with Sam Altman, I think it was Sam Altman who was talking about this, they asked Elon, in the hypothetical world where Elon was CEO of OpenAI and he died, who would take it over? And Elon was like, I haven't given it that much thought, but I don't know, maybe my children. And everyone's like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's make the AGI future AI machine a hereditary oligarchy. That sounds perfect. Yes.
Yeah, great.
Anyway,
Dune.
So So that's fun. But anyways, they didn't let him do that, and he's mad about it. Is is what OpenAI says is the reason for this lawsuit. Elon says it's because OpenAI stole a charity, and he invested whatever $1 billion in them that they just took as a nonprofit, and then became a for-profit company, etc. Which did happen, but the most interesting part of this lawsuit is not any of the actual details of the lawsuit, but all of the early OpenAI communications that have come out about it. The important part being there that Elon Musk is extremely butt mad that he's not in charge of OpenAI, and therefore is willing to work with their competitor to kill them.
One of the least professional humans to ever be the richest man in existence.
Yep. So SpaceX is leasing a whole bunch of their data center capacity to Anthropic, and also in this platformer article about did they concede the AI race, they point out that like Musk himself has repeatedly called Anthropic a key threat, complaining that, among other things, Claude, quote, hates whites and Asians, especially Chinese, heterosexuals, and men. Actual tweet from Elon Musk some number of months ago. But he has a more recent tweet that says like he's met with people of Anthropic and his evil detector didn't go off. He thinks that all of them are doing good work and genuinely care about doing the right thing for the future or whatever. So,
the father of Mecha Hitler thinks we're doing the right thing for the future. I'm so reassured.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the early Musk OpenAI stuff was crazy because some of the quotes that I've seen also is that the reason that he wanted to found OpenAI in the first place is that he thought Demis Hassabis, who's the CEO of DeepMind that was then acquired by Google and is now the Google AI, was basically a supervillain who didn't care about humanity and was going to be the evil overlord of AI, and he needed a counter evil overlord company.
Okay, dude, sure. I guess.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's fun. I saw this deal and I was like, that's interesting for a number of reasons. But if like he is conceding that XAI is not a real competitor here, I'm not going to complain. It's like the quote at the end of this platformer is. In the meantime, the most irresponsible of the leading AI companies is now effectively selling itself off for parts. It may be the best thing Musk has done for humanity in ages, which is like not deliberately. He's doing it for incredibly petty, stupid reasons. But if he's doing that for petty, stupid reasons and he manages to kill Grok anyway, that's fine, I guess.
Let's break that clock twice a day.
Yeah. But that does pull in another circular funding deal to segue a little bit to talking about circular funding deals, which is just the whole mess of things, which we have talked about previously in this podcast. In October, I looked it up. Is this Bloomberg circular finance chart about how everyone in AI is giving money to each other, and it's just real bad. They have an interactive version on the Bloomberg site where you can go and see all of it. Share. So we can explore the deals. Mm-hmm. For example, Anthropic is backed by Google and Amazon, and it has also announced plans to raise money from and do business with Microsoft and NVIDIA. So like the most common pattern that you will see on this chart is a company that provides computing capacity investing in an AI company that will then buy computing capacity back from them. So that's these sort of pink and blue investment hardware lines. Similarly, the services and investment lines are kind of similar too, which are the most directly egregious circularness of it, because it is just like I actually even like 2 years ago, I heard VCs actually complaining about this because. What is bad about this from a VC's perspective is that if Microsoft invests in OpenAI, they can do it at a drastically inflated valuation because the valuation doesn't actually matter to them. They're just getting their money back anyway, because they're just buying cloud compute from them. Whereas the VCs have to actually like make money off the equity of the company and a later exit, etc.
Oh no, we made all the rules fake and unfair.
Oh no, all the money is fake. And it's fake in a way that doesn't advantage us this time. What's that about? So yeah, the big sort of strategic is what they call it, investors, which is like big companies that invest because it's useful for them and not because they're trying to make money. inflate the valuations even more than they would already be inflated just from the hype cycle that it. So is the complaint of VCs here. And so that's the sort of like the direct circles that are happening here a lot. But then there's obviously the ones where it's just like the money goes around various places because all of these are interlinked with each other. One of the things that I think it's important to understand about this is that this is particularly bad, but I don't think this is unique to the AI space.
That's true.
In that there's a lot of business to business deals that are fake money and that nevertheless get treated as real money by, say, all the press around it, first of all. And second of all, it becomes real when these companies IPO and go into the real stock market, and then you can sell the stock for real money. So it's, I don't know.
The onanistic hand of the free market.
Yeah. So I've talked about this before also on this podcast, but I think a really critical bubble moment we will have is when OpenAI tries to go public. Because they keep saying that they're gonna, and there's been some reporting that their CFO said, no, we shouldn't, and we're not ready for it, and that Sam Altman was overriding her, which was not great.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But also there's been a bunch of reporting that, like, because as we saw in the ramp chart, they're not doing that great lately. Their usage is dropping compared to Anthropic. And their revenue and Anthropic's is about equivalent now per latest reporting. They're both at like 25 billion annualized, I think. And so people are like, wait, but if they're about the same and Anthropic is growing faster, why is OpenAI like 3 times the valuation of Anthropic right now? The answer is that all numbers are fake and it was all high. But that's the short answer.
Welcome to capitalism, where the rules are made up and the points matter so much.
Yes, but that it was more hype driven. But like also people are noticing this now, which means that like in private secondary markets, there's a bunch of reporting I've seen that like people are trying to find buyers for their OpenAI shares at the current valuation and not being able to find them, whereas everyone is scrambling to try and to get into Anthropic, and Anthropic is maybe raising at $1 trillion valuation before they go public. I saw a little bit of reporting on that. So OpenAI had talked about going public at $1 trillion valuation or more this year. And I don't think that's going to work out for them if they try and do that, because it sounds like people aren't going to buy even at the current price and are trying to get out of it. But it might, like what might happen is that they do it and there's enough consumers who are still waiting to get in that all of the early investors can offload their shares into the market, and then it crashes. And that might be the bubble pop, but or they could not do it and Anthropic could go first and that could work fine. And I don't like, there's various ways that this could play out, but I think the OpenAI IPO will be a very pivotal moment here.
Yeah.
Notably, like there was some reporting that NVIDIA did not want to invest that much more in OpenAI. Like they had again said that they would put in like some crazy number like $100 billion or up to $100 billion, and then they said actually we're not doing $100 billion, we're doing like 10 or whatever, and everyone was like NVIDIA losing faith in OpenAI, and they're like no, we said up to, like we didn't promise anything, but also
right.
The other comment, I think it was a Jensen Huang comment, that was like, this is our last opportunity to invest in OpenAI. And it's like, why would that be the case? If they go IPO, you could buy their stock at any time, or even if they do another raise after this, before they go public, you can invest at any time.
You're right. What do you mean your last chance? This will be our last chance to hand someone money.
And what the implication there is that they think this is the peak, and therefore it would not make any sense to invest after this, or only kind of makes sense to do it now even. Which I think is probably true, and I think a lot of people are thinking that might be true. But maybe they'll rehype it up. I never know. So, but yeah, it's all the numbers are fake. It's very depressing.
Man, if only a German philosopher had written about this.
The slightly optimistic take that I will have on this is that this is a Bloomberg interactive chart that many people that I have known have referenced independently. And so many people are aware of this at this point, that this is a thing and that it's not a great thing. And people are talking about it, which, again, the first step to solving a problem is acknowledging you have one, etc. So people are at least noting that this is not great, including Bloomberg, notably not a socialist bastion usually. Nvidia is the biggest one here, obviously. It's the biggest circle on this chart right now, and also the one with the most links here. And their stock has been booming lately, even. Like, I think they have 4.8 trillion valuation on here, and I think they're coming up on 6 with their stock rallying recently, $6 trillion, because all the investors are being like, well, we don't know who's going to win the AI op race, except that we know it's going to be Nvidia, because look at this chart. It doesn't matter who wins. Nvidia is going to come out on top, we think. So everyone's trying to get into Nvidia, and they are notably a public company, so everyone can just buy their stock.
Yeah. All right. Let's see how that works.
Yeah, I mean, they're also it's what they like to call picks and shovels company of AI, which is like which is a gold rush analogy if you've never heard that saying before.
I have not.
It's a startup thing, but it's basically like in the gold rush, you don't want to be the person who's digging for gold. You want to be the person selling picks and shovels. Because then it doesn't matter if anyone actually finds gold. You're doing fine. You got your money, more or less. So Nvidia is here a picks and shovels of the AI boom, which is people have to buy their chips. Doesn't matter if they do anything successful with them.
Boy, what a fun way to live. Historically, Gold Rush noted as real cool and fun.
Real great for the economy.
Good for the economy, good for the environment, good for the people involved, good for the people not involved.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that. And there's some other picks and shovels companies on here, but basically, like, a lot of the hardware chip companies are getting that.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense.
Yeah. Or any of the more foundational tools to it, just like the companies doing data labeling are also sort of in there, like that kind of stuff. So the things where it's just like, this is foundational to the whole thing, and it doesn't depend on any one particular successful bet.
Right, because everyone's going to need these things.
Yep. And, like, I guess slightly positively, like, you could use chips for lots of other things too. So, like, some of the what happens with when the bubble pops takes that I've seen have been like, okay, but, like, it's not necessarily bad if we have a bunch of chips in data centers, because there's a lot of things that you can compute, which makes it better than some other bubbles.
Yeah. Ford graphics cards again, that'd be great.
Yeah. Everyone build their cloud gaming companies that they've never been able to make work until now.
Oh yeah, just this time I swear the cloud gaming company. Just give me one more shot at it. Make it a viable business model.
So yeah, so our final topic is your topic. Do you want to give a little summary?
Yeah, kind of pursuant to what we've been talking about with technological problems versus systemic problems, there has been a big discrepancy in how various either laws or, terms of service have been enforced on large versus small creators. And kind of the two pieces of that I've been seeing the most of is one, the way censorship has been coming down on smaller creators, like mostly driven by these payment processors, Visa and Stripe and such, disallowing, adult content on storefronts, but not necessarily from large production companies. And then sort of, isn't it funny how copyright law doesn't matter anymore? Remember when they were putting grandmas in prison for using Napster, and now we just just kidding. But the payment processor obscenity stuff, man, now that Kickstarter is also like really cracking down on, adult material, kind of depressing. Like, I saw a tweet from someone on the Baldur's Gate creative team being like, hey, shouldn't doesn't our game not meet Steam community guidelines? Kind of interesting that you're tossing off a whole lot of, small and, marginalized queer creators, but not Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate's not a problem, huh?
Yeah.
Um, and I think some platforms have tried to be more judicious about it than others. Like, HIO has been like quite imperfect, but at least are like showing some sympathy and sensitivity for creators. But I think it's really scary, especially when a lot of legislature is also rolling back
Mm-hmm.
protections for minorities and queer folks. That like you see things with any queer themes being called quote unquote adult if there's just any whiff of anything remotely sexual about it. Things are getting tossed off platforms for stuff way more tame than the Victoria's Secret display that I would walk past every day going to the mall job.
Yeah, I think the Baldur's Gate comment thing I think is really interesting and pointed, which is just like, yeah, you will toss people off your platform if they don't matter to you, and the big ones are fine because you can't afford to lose them. Sort of on that topic, I think the most egregious sort of platform moderation case of this recently was X not getting kicked off the App Store when it was full of deepfake
Yeah,
porn.
right. What do you
Yes.
mean?
Yeah, because it's like this has more and worse stuff on it than like so many things, and like Apple is historically like really strict about that stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and no comment there because they're not going to pick a fight with Elon Musk.
Yeah,
The
and
only reason. So
and it is just kind of going mask off. I mean, like it's always been this way, and especially for certain populations, it has always been this way. But just how many things go rules for thee, but not for me.
mhm.
That that lives were ruined, people were killed over media piracy, and now Disney wanted to invest in Sora AI.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't, like, it fell through, but like just
Yes.
the fact that they were even talking about that is insane. Like the number one rule in all that you hear people talk about all the time is don't mess with the mouse. Like,
Yeah.
just how draconianly protective Disney has always been of their intellectual property, and still just don't.
Yeah. Like that. When that was announced, that was just so wild to me because, like, Sam Altman thinks that he can get away with everything, but he
Mm-hmm.
appears to kind of be able to, like, for some reason that I don't understand. Like, less so now. Like, he's hit a few losses now, and therefore is being very confused and struggling about it. But
We've got
like,
some L's on the board.
got a few L's for Sam Altman on the board. But like, he was on a real run of W's there, and
Yeah.
convincing Disney that they wanted to give him money for giving him their intellectual property. Like, the details of the deal there were never completely revealed, and I did see some reporting that it was going to involve some licensing fee being paid
Yeah.
from OpenAI to Disney, in addition to Disney just investing in OpenAI. But that was just wild.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and it just doesn't matter anymore.
yeah, or like it does matter for some people, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're an AI company and you can just be like, but this is the future.
But this is future.
And
And
yeah, I on the topic of does copyright even matter anymore, I always think about Mark Andreessen's comments to the Copyright Office like a couple years ago about like the whole question of can you use copyrighted data for AI training, basically.
it's just
Um,
like
and his comments were more or less like it has to be allowed because the business model doesn't work otherwise, and it will kill American innovation if you don't make this be the case.
my business model doesn't work if everyone I make eye contact doesn't hand me a crisp Benji.
Yes, exactly. But because he's Mark Andreessen and he's the head of the biggest venture capital firm in the country, he could just be like, but the businesses won't work if this doesn't happen, and people listen to him for some reason. And it's like, okay, but like there are many businesses run by creators or even just like small studios or journalists or like many businesses that don't work if you can just take their intellectual property for nothing. That's also a business that doesn't work. So, but we see which one matters, and it's the one that can donate hundreds of millions of dollars to a political campaign. So,
wow, they united those citizens, didn't they?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, Carly, I think it might be broken, and I think it might be broken fast.
Mm-hmm. Theoretically, there are more things to say about that. I mean, the whole issue of payment processors dictating content standards, I think we have talked about on the podcast before, but it's just like such a wild artifact of how we have ended up in this situation.
Right. What do you mean Visa gets to decide whether or not I get to look at boobies? Like
Yes.
That's not Visa's business.
Yeah. For people who are maybe not as familiar, this is a common pattern among platforms where they will be like, we as a platform need to impose more content standards, especially on like pornographic or sexual by some usually unclear definition
right
content, because our payment processors don't allow it to be used for adult content. And payment processors, meaning Stripe in the case of Kickstarter, but Stripe is doing it because they are on top of like credit card companies and things like that specifically.
Yeah.
And so because the credit card companies don't want their money being used for porn, they just get to dictate the content standards for any website in the world.
So I was reading a little more on this, but months ago, I believe it was Denise Dreamwith was talking about this, that basically, you know, you have payment providers that handle like high risk and low risk transactions. And so like the ones we're mostly used to, you know, Stripe and everyone that Stripe's sitting on top of, you know, they're expecting to process a certain volume of fraudulent activity. And, you know, and whether this is based on data or this is just kind of how the industry is, like, you know, a quote unquote adult entertainment has always been considered like high risk.
Yeah. This is starting to sound familiar. I probably also read this post at some point.
Yeah, you probably did.
And I do think there's some data around that. I remember hearing like anecdotal stuff from even just like back in the day when you had to like subscribe to cable channels and things like that.
Yeah.
Like dudes coming in and being like, "Oh no, I didn't subscribe to like porn channel X
Who
or
charged
whatever.
That to my,
Who charged that to my credit card?
Yeah,
no, I didn't do that. No." So like I think there's definitely more of that in that area.
But just the problem is like what's getting defined as that is getting tighter and tighter. And you know, I mean, I'm a bit more liberal in, you know, what I, you know, I support sex workers. I support sex work. I'll just say that on the podcast with my professional name attached. That, you know, I think that stuff should be recognized and protected, and it's, you know, not necessarily a payment provider's business what within the law a person wants to do with their money. And also there's kind of the double problem of like what gets defined as acceptable and unacceptable eroticism, which is, you know, obviously way outside the scope of this podcast.
Yes. But yeah, we've definitely talked about supporting sex workers on this podcast before. And in fact, it reminds me of another related topic that I think we talked about a little bit before, which is OpenAI doing erotic chatbots. Speaking of double standards, which they have put on pause for now. So that was the whole thing, because first of all, Sam Altman said like 2 years ago in an interview that they wouldn't do erotic chatbots because that seemed like a hack to juice user engagement or whatever, that they wouldn't need to do except as a last resort or something like that.
Except as a last, all right.
And then they announced that they were going to do that in like December or something like that. So everyone was like, man, you're at your last resort already, huh, buddy? But also one of those things where it's just like, okay, like, so Sam Altman, OpenAI, gets to make erotic content because, again,
right.
they're like not real sex workers.
Yep.
You get to build the content scraping company and then use everyone's work and generate that, and you get paid for it. But like the people who actually do it, no, they're terrible, dirty people who cannot use Visa cards or whatever. That's cool.
Amazing.
So
right,
like,
right. That is a great point of like, well, what are you trading your erotic bots on?
mm-hmm. I mean, for sure, a lot of the existing chatbots are trained on Archive of Our Own. That is explicit. They have said as much, even in some of their official publications.
You're a barista, a lonely single barista, or
Mm-hmm.
you're a botanist, or you run a flower shop new in town, and you've
Yes.
broken your leg, and
Yep.
and there's only one bed.
Yes.
Martha Wells, visionary, she knew that the robots were gonna be watching pulp garbage to learn to be people.
Yeah. The one thing I tried to put in here, but I didn't, it was paywalled from me, was a
Mm.
Forbes article that was released on Janitor AI, which is a AI erotic roleplay platform. And it is run by three dudes.
Okay.
And this article was like the three dudes who are in charge of like the erotic roleplay website that so many women use, etc. So there's, to be on topic here, there's a lot of aspects here of appropriating some things and then monetizing them, because if you're a cool guy running a company with AI in the name, then it's fine. And
Right.
if you are a woman who's actually just doing the thing, then it's
Then,
evil. Yeah.
oh boy.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of really concerning things that follow that pattern of like the deciding factor is not the content, but the
Yeah.
the entity or person that is presenting it, and therefore it is really a judgment on that person and not on the content.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one is especially depressing to me because there's so much like bipartisan protect the children bullshit around it, and
I
it's just
know.
people who have done much more research and are much more eloquent than me on the topic have talked about why protect the children is
It is never about protecting children. It is.
um, but that like there are definitely a certain set of conservatives who, for example, don't just want to stop children from seeing porn. They want to stop everyone from seeing porn, and that they will do that just by making it really inconvenient for everyone under the guise of protecting the children. For example,
Yes.
like that's a real motivation that some of them have said out loud, literally. But yet there are still a lot of Democrats who are like, well, I'm not going to be the person who says don't protect the children, so I'm on board this too. And
Yep.
it would be really cool if anyone had any amount of spine. But, you know.
Yeah, for real. Well, it's fun to have dreams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think
The
in conclusion, all technology was a mistake. Rocks weren't meant to think, and we have done the devil's work.
Yeah. Um,
Bring back carrier pigeons.
I don't think all technology was a mistake. Some of the internet is pretty cool, but it's really concerning because it's like it's not like tech was great a decade ago or even like 15 years ago, but I do think it has just gotten way worse.
Yeah,
In a
it's gone mask off.
Yeah, and just like in a lot of ways, like again, you can just be like, oh, is XAI posting a bunch of deep fake porn on Twitter? Is that against my terms of service? Yeah. Am I going to do anything about it? No. Is anyone going to do anything about it? No. Because there's nothing anyone can do about it. Like, okay, like that's just where we live now.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's depressing. It's bad.
I do have a hard time when people who have assured me that I'm a rube notice what I noticed 10 years ago and are like, damn, that's crazy. And I'm like, oh, is it?
Yeah.
Are we going to like reconsider everything else you've been wrong about and I've been right about? No, we're not going to do that. But I just wish there was some humility in tech, you know?
No. I mean, yes, I also wish that, but I guess I have stopped having any hope for that to be the case.
Denethor, yes, I do wish that.
The amount of discovering that tech people are doing of stuff where it's just like, this is literally the foundations of the humanities. If you had not been dismissing the entire value of a humanities education your entire life, you would have known this. Not the first person just discovering this now. There's a lot of that stuff, but at least they're discovering it now. We can have these conversations a little bit more.
I wish my wish is that more times when someone discovers or newly learns to value like a large branch of knowledge or skill that they previously hadn't, that like their first instinct wasn't like, I am so much smarter now. Like their first instinct was like, oh shit, I was
Yeah.
missing something before. Maybe I need to reevaluate the value of my contribution here. But no, it's always, now
Yeah.
I'm extra right.
Yes. On that topic, I don't think I've talked about this one on the podcast. I read about it on LinkedIn a little bit. The whole thing about AI people talking about how taste is the differentiator now. Like anyone can build a thing, but having good taste about like what the right thing is to build and like the aesthetics of it and the like the interaction of it is important. And
Okay.
I read one whole long blog post about like, okay, how do you develop taste? What does taste mean? Talking about looking at really good music producers and like art studies and things like that. I'm like, yeah, because this is a whole thing, guys. Like,
A word, human creativity matters, and a breadth of knowledge and experience. That's crazy.
but that's maybe also an AI positive thing is that people do have to start caring about that stuff a little bit more.
Please, prayer circle, prayer hands.
Yeah, like there's some genuinely good potential impacts of how AI could impact things. There's also many bad ones, but like there are some potential good ones that I do already see in some ways, and some of them are people understanding what engineering is, people understanding the value of creativity and uh, human interactions.
Let's put a pin in people valuing creativity.
Yes, I mean they're still working on that one, but like again, like seeing some people start to be like, "Oh, huh, there's something here, isn't there?" And it's like, "Yeah, there is," um, which again would have been nice if they noticed that, or if they acknowledged now that it has existed for a long time and they've just been ignoring it. But I will take acknowledge it over not acknowledge it. Thank you for listening to the Fast and Broken podcast. I'm Carly Rector, and if you'd like to support my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter at carlyrector.substack.com.
I'm Oz Brown. If you want to say hi, Oz, feel free to do so on LinkedIn. You can find me under Olivia quote unquote Oz Brown. Or you can check out America's Next Top Model for the original Wii console, where I play about half the supporting cast.
Yeah, that's going to be real easy to check out, I bet.
Just head down to the
GameStop.
the nearest $5 bin in a Walmart 12 years ago.
Yes. And if you enjoyed this podcast, leave us a like or a review. It lets us know people are listening and helps more people find the podcast. See you next week.